Hi everyone, and welcome to More Than a Broker. We wanted to give you a quick heads up that we experienced some internet issues during this recording. This resulted in a few changes in sound quality during the conversation. We appreciate your patience and hope you still enjoy the episode.
Welcome to More Than a Broker, the podcast that goes beyond the traditional definition of a logistics provider. My name is Andrew Elsener, co-founder of Spot. In each episode, we will dive into the stories of industry experts, keep you up to date on the highs and lows of the logistics marketplace, and introduce you to the people behind the advanced technologies that are driving innovation for brokers, shippers, and carriers within our industry. Join us as we explore the world of logistics through a different lens. This is More Than a Broker.
Drivers, start your engine!
One of the things I love to start with is that I started as a biology and chemistry teacher and now in a logistics company, but you also have a very interesting journey. So where did you start in logistics and how did you get where you are at?
I actually did go to school for broadcast journalism. I wanted to be a news anchor or whatever. And I did go to school for that. And I did work as a disc jockey at a radio station, but my mom got ill with Lou Gehrig's disease. And so I moved back to Wisconsin. And I had taken drafting in high school. So I got a job drafting material handling equipment at a steel fabricating plant. And it was interesting. It was fun. Our customers were like huge warehouses, Kellogg's, Harley Davidson, Ford, Mack truck, things like that. So it was kind of fun. But one day they asked if I wanted to move into the traffic department and they would send me to school. And I was 19 years old. And I thought, okay, maybe 20, and so they sent me to school for traffic and transportation management. And I went from assistant traffic manager to traffic manager. I learned how to read tariffs. I learned how to audit freight bills. I had 3 drivers, 3 trucks, 3 plants, responsible for all the material handling equipment going out and the raw material coming in. And I was 20. It was quite the experience.
First off, how long did you DJ?
About a year, a little over a year.
Going from DJ to transport is a little different, huh? You got out of DJing and got into transportation. How far was post deregulation?
It was before deregulation. I earned my diploma in 1980, and it was right about that time. So interestingly enough, when salespeople would call on me to get me to use them because everyone's rates were the same, they all went by tariffs. And you would not believe the things I got offered.
What's the craziest thing you...
Bribes. I mean, seriously, because our freight was heavy, it was expensive, and it was not easily damaged because it was material handling equipment. I got offered dates with brewers. I got offered things that were not even legal. And I would say, get out, just get out. It was a very interesting time.
I've always wondered, did everybody have the exact same rates on file? So was the tariff the same for everybody?
So basically, you had to know which carriers went to which destinations because their certificates, their authority permits were very, very valuable. So before they had started the traffic department, they had one carrier and it was CW Transport, or Gross Common Carrier, both central Wisconsin, very small carriers. And then they would decide what trucks to put them on to go out. And so that's why they decided to start their own traffic department, was to make better informed decisions on which trucks to put them on. We did a lot of flatbeds. Rail trucking was one of our biggest carriers because we could load it, with forklifts or whatever. So it was a good flatbed commodity.
So now technology is way different. So you think about the transformation. How would you, or what would you use to get stuff organized?
It wasn't about rates, of course, but it was really their authority. I mean, it was what authority did they have and who could get it there the fastest and who was the best as far as keeping our product undamaged.
Did they leverage technology back then? Like from a person listening that uses software now that matches trucking companies and moves everything around, back before that, how would you even keep your board organized to know what's even going on?
You kind of went with just a few carriers, and inbound raw material, we had 3 of our own trucks, so we used those trucks. And I learned that you do not put coil on bar stock, even if the weight allows it. But we kind of stuck with just a few basic flatbed carriers that could take it out. Now, if it was LTL, then it really depended on what part of the country they shipped to. And I remember East Texas Motor Freight, ETMF, was trying to get authority in Wisconsin. And so they flew me to an ICC hearing to testify that I would use them so that they could expand their authority into Wisconsin. It was just a whole different ballgame, but authority was so valuable in those days.
So in that instance, the carrier wanted to expand services so the ICC could control. You couldn't do much, right?
Exactly. The ICC determined where you went. And when I started my family, I started doing consulting to trucking companies. And I actually did file for authority for, mostly I licensed and permitted them and kept their trucks and their drivers legal. But I actually did the OP1, which was the ICC authority. And this, I've never told this story. This is interesting. So it was 2 guys who hauled mostly livestock, but some Amish families in the area wanted them to move them to other states like Indiana and Missouri so that, they would move around so they weren't all one family, right? And so I applied for authority from the ICC for household goods and all the big movers. We're talking a company with only 2 trucks, right? All the big movers denied the authority because they're like, well, that's us, North American Van Lines. And here it was a little company with 2 trucks who wanted to haul Amish people, and we got denied the authority.
That is very interesting. And the business plan is unique also. If you were in business or established and the ICC gave you the authority in that area, they could say yes or no.
Correct.
Gosh, it's so different than today.
It was so different. And then when deregulation happened, which was right around 1980, suddenly, because ours was mostly truckload, suddenly we could have contract freight rates, which we could have earlier, but our stuff went all over the country, or all over North America. So suddenly it was more contract rates, and it changed a lot for the better, I would say.
When you think about how you have lived through the time period of deregulation to regulation, how long did it take for that transformation to be real? Whether it be competition, changes in operations, fleets that went out, what was that experience like?
So the biggest change was trying to adapt to a national regulation. So like when we had IFTA, International Fuel Tax Agreement, I would have to do those forms by hand, believe it or not. I'd keep things on a spreadsheet. But also I remember Illinois, their weight was 73,280 pounds. And here I am in Wisconsin. So unless I was shipping something west to go through Minnesota, everything went through Illinois. So I couldn't ever ship 80,000 pounds because it had to go through Illinois. So with deregulation kind of forced the states to adopt some more common standards so that I didn't have to lose that weight just because we were going through Illinois all the time. And then it also forced the states to work together on the paperwork, because one of my carriers had like 22 trucks when I was doing consulting, and he would buy trucks in December. So what was I doing at Christmas? I was sitting there applying for bingo cards, trying to get Public Utilities Commission and things like that. Deregulation also helped automate things much more.
I first got into trucking on the asset side in the early 2000s, and I remember trip packs. It's hard even to imagine the trip pack process, just how much it's changed.
Oh, no, they'd stick them in an envelope. And I mean, now you get paid electronically. But also remember when you went into a truck stop and they had a service, and I don't remember the name of it, but it would go into your window and it would provide either air conditioning or heat, and you could call home, and it had movies and things like that, things now that we have in the palm of our hand.
It's funny, you would drive by a truck stop back then because a scanner in a truck was big technology. We used to hire truckers and give them a camera right when you hired them.
And remember how all the phone booths at the truck stop, because they would all call in, or they'd look at the keyboard on a screen. And I remember I was married to a small fleet owner, and we had our own toll-free number so that he could call me from a payphone with a toll-free number. Things are so different.
So different. The technology has changed, and the truck drivers' amenities have changed substantially.
Let's talk about that. I remember the showers. The showers were like a locker room, and they were only for men. So if I wanted to take a shower, someone would have to stand at the door and make sure that nobody came in so I could quick take a shower. So we've come a long way.
A long way.
When I first got in T-Check, I don't know if you remember the old T-Check process. I would have a card in my wallet that would have codes to fill out the express form. Today, it's such a different process, but it's better, right? So you leave transportation and you go to consulting after that.
I did consulting for about 18 years. I had 2 kids and I was raising my family, so it worked out well.
And did you work on mostly helping trucking companies get up and get started, or where did you focus in the consulting sector?
So I did everything like their fuel taxes, driver qualification files, audited logbooks, things like that. So I kept their trucks and their drivers legal. Some of them were 1 truck fleets, and some of them, I think the biggest carrier I had was 32 trucks. So, I mean, there were small companies would outsource to me.
Do you have a CDL too?
I do have a CDL.
What made you do that?
So when I started Women in Trucking in 2007, one of the truck driving schools challenged me and said, you don't have a CDL. And actually I did. I had the chauffeur's license, but I didn't grandfather myself in because I said, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. So in 2008, I went to Cuyahoga Community College in Cleveland and earned my CDL.
Love it. How was that?
It was great. I always laugh because in Cleveland, they don't have snow. They have lake effect. So it was December. It was, pretty snowy. But what amazed me was you could be driving a tractor trailer that says student driver in big letters and people still cut you off.
So I always wondered, was there anything you thought or perceptions you had when you went to get your CDL that completely changed your mindset when you were done? Whether it was turning, backing up, what was different?
As I said earlier, I was married to an over-the-road driver, so I went with him a lot. We had a small fleet, so I was always in the passenger side. But I think the thing that surprised me the most is how stupid four-wheelers are. And I'm a four-wheeler. I look at how dumb they would act around a truck, and it's like, did you just really do that? And I'm sitting here with 80,000 pounds, or it wasn't 80,000 in a training situation, but I'm sitting in a tractor trailer and you can see everything. So the surprising part, first of all, getting my CDL made me a much better car driver. You learn in a semi that if you're at a stop sign and there's a car in front of you, you stay way back in case that car stalls and you have to go around. And you're always looking at the stoplights 2 streets ahead to watch if they're red or green so that you can stop, slow down and advance and things like that. You're much more looking around you and keeping an eye on what the four-wheelers are doing around you.
Did you say you were part of a small fleet also?
Yeah, we had 3 trucks.
What kind of freight did you haul?
We had 1 truck that was intermodal. So it just went down to Milwaukee and brought in trailers. And then 2 of them were leased to Rich's Transportation out of New York. It was frozen food and a lot of front style food, that pies and whipped cream, things like that. I don't even know if they're still around, but it was Rich's Transportation.
Was it mostly long haul?
It was long haul. And then later we were with Fox Midwest. And it's funny because none of these carriers are around anymore. And Fox Midwest was more paper coming out of Wisconsin, going down to Georgia, Texas. So that was nicer. It could stay out of the East Coast. But it was 3 trucks, so we buy 1 a year.
Yeah, I mean, I think technology has done so many great things for efficiency and more insight into what's going on. At the same time, it has changed a lot of things. What has it been since you got into it today? I mean, what has been the one thing that's really changed transportation, changed trucking? Could you point to anything? This is the game changer. This is what really changed it.
I would actually say there's 2 things. One, in the past, when it was typically a truck driver came in because his dad or his uncle or his grandpa or somebody in the family was a truck driver. And so they wanted to be a truck driver. That's not the case anymore. In fact, a lot of truck drivers I talk to don't want their family members getting in the industry because they know how hard it is. So I would say that it used to be that drivers came in the industry and they loved to drive truck. Today, that's not the case. They're just doing it for a job. And the other thing, in those days, drivers were independent. There's no independence anymore. You've got GPS on you. You've got qual counts. You've got they're tracking your trailer. I mean, if you are an independent person who doesn't want someone looking over your shoulder, trucking isn't the place to be for you anymore. In fact, if you have forward-facing cameras, I mean, you literally have no privacy. So I would say the old idea of an independent person who doesn't want to be around other people or loves the independence, that's not the case anymore. You've got someone looking over your shoulder 24/7.
So you decided to find an association. You walked me through. How did you get into women in trucking?
While I was consulting, I raised 2 kids and I got my bachelor's in journalism and my master's in communication. And I had served on the board of Trucker Buddy International. And so when I graduated, I applied for the executive director position. I did that for 6 years. And Schneider National recruited me. Basically, they're like, we want you to come. We love your energy. We love the fact that your family is part of your background. And so I was recruited by Schneider and I started working for them in January of 2006. And my job was manager of recruiting and retention programs. And so they said, figure out how to attract and retain non-traditional groups. And that was returning military, seniors, Hispanics, and women. And so I started doing my research on why aren't more women coming into the industry? What are women looking for? And realized that women are looking for money because it's the same amount as men, but they would leave. They felt that the carrier wasn't looking out for them. Like they had to have a carrier that cared about their personal safety. And at Schneider, we had our own operating centers. I mean, they were fenced in and there was weight rooms and lounges and delis and, it was a safe environment. And so when I was doing my job, I was working on my pilot's license and I belonged to a women's aviation association. And I thought, well, why is there an association for female pilots, but we don't have anything for women in the trucking industry? So I asked a bunch of very influential women and we put together a board of directors. And in March of 2007, we had our very first meeting, became incorporated, wrote our mission statement, and I was still working at Schneider at the time, but I hired someone, my friend Shar, to work as the employee at Women in Trucking. So they were very supportive because my job was kind of the same thing as what I was doing with the association. So it worked out well. And the first year, my goal was 500 members, and we actually hit that. And so since March of 2007, the association has grown unbelievably to be over 8,000 members in 10 countries and beyond my wildest dreams. And then in 2010, I also founded the foundation, the Scholarship Foundation, which gives scholarships to women in the industry as well. So, and then in June of 2023, I retired as CEO.
Congrats.
Thanks.
So what is the mission? When you think about women in trucking, what is the core of it? What's the mission and how does this industry benefit from it?
So the mission has always been to encourage the employment of women in the trucking industry, to address obstacles, and to celebrate success. And the celebrate success part means telling their stories. So the biggest thing is increase the ranks of women employed in the supply chain. And whether that means women diesel techs, female drivers, female CEOs, safety directors, middle managers, whatever, it's to bring more women into the supply chain. And I believe that we have been very successful, but we still have a long ways to go. So when I started, women made up less than 3% of drivers. Now it's about 12%. No diesel techs in the past, but now we're about 3%. Safety managers, that one has just exploded. Women make great safety managers. And more women in the C-suite and more women in the leadership roles, much more. So I've seen a lot of change. We still have a ways to go. There has been a lot of positive change.
Through all your research and work, I've always thought trucking mainly just focusing on the truck driver side of it. There's always the thing that there's a shortage of drivers, but I think I was reading somewhere once a couple years ago, women made up only a small percent, single digit, like you said. Then it's not like any other comparable industry where women make up such a small portion of the worker population. And so to see the progress is awesome.
Well, there is. In fact, I've reached out to, worked with a lot of like women in mining, women in pipeline, women in rail is even less. And female pilots only make up about 6% of commercial pilots. So, I mean, there are a lot of similar transportation related careers that really want to bring more women in. And I just think that we're all learning from each other. And one of the biggest issues we have to deal with is the image of the industry. And trucking has lots of people when they're a kid, they want to be a pilot, maybe even a train engineer, but we don't have enough saying, I want to be a truck driver.
Right. I think awareness too. What is it really like? What do you think was the biggest barrier for women getting into trucking? The work, the lifestyle? I know the general over the road, middle mile freight, there's sectors like final mile or origin that get different interest. What do you think it is?
The biggest issue is that women don't picture themselves in the industry. So that's why we tell stories. That's why we celebrate success. We have drivers of the year. We have members of the month. We have influential women in trucking. We have to share their stories and talk about what they do so that other women can look at them and say, oh, I hadn't thought about that career. We've had drivers on Megyn Kelly's show, and we had a driver give Diane Sawyer a ride. I mean, we want them out in the non-trucking media so that other women can say, I just hadn't thought about that. So that's the biggest barrier, is women picturing themselves. We created a Girl Scout transportation patch. We created a truck driver doll. In fact, can you see my girl there behind me? To get more women involved. But I will tell you, the reason women leave is because they don't feel safe. And so we still have obstacles to address to make sure that women feel safe. And whether that's in a parking area, whether that's on the road if there's a snowstorm or a protest or a tornado, whatever. And then the other part of that safety is the maintenance of the equipment. Women tend to do their homework before they go to a carrier and make sure that it's newer equipment or very well maintained, because being broken down on the side of the road is not safe.
Something you said earlier, like thinking about the shower situation. Back in the day, I mean, have you seen a transformation? I know parking is still a big challenge across the industry. What have you seen from getting amenities that are more equal and provide that environment for women in trucking? Have you seen that change?
Yeah, and I'd like to say that we drove that. And so a couple of things, like we had a great relationship with most of the truck stop chains, but TA Petro came to us and said, find out from your members what we could do better. One of the issues was paid parking. So we asked for their feedback. But the other issue was the shower situation. And they said, what can we do better? So I went on our social media and I said, give me some positive feedback on what changes they could make. And TA Petro actually went, and first of all, they make their managers shower in their own truck stops once a month. They also, one of the complaints was that the exchange of air wasn't enough, so that if you got out of the shower, you didn't cool off if it was hot outside. So they actually have to measure the air coming out of the vents. And the third one was, female drivers especially didn't like the fuzziness on the vents because it was dirt, right? And so they actually have to clean. And then in the process, they put in hair dryers and big shower heads and fluffy towels. And you'll even see some flowers in the showers. And so that was the result of us working with them saying, we need a clean environment. And the other one, Andrew, that I'm really proud of is that we work with the truck manufacturers on truck cab design and amenities. And that was huge. Because women in the past, if they were short, they had to sit on a pillow or put something on their feet to reach the pedals. So we're not designing a truck for women. We're designing a truck that's adaptable for a smaller statured person.
When you go back to thinking about recruiting and awareness, I always tell people all the time, I work in logistics. There's really nothing in high school. There's majors in certain colleges, but no one grows and says, hey, I want to be a logistics worker or anything like that. It just doesn't happen unless you know somebody that did it. How do trucking companies improve recruitment and retention of women drivers? Because I think really the awareness piece is a big part of it. It just isn't known, and it is a very good living.
So I mentioned our Girl Scout transportation patch. A lot of trucking companies have invited the media in, invited a Girl Scout troop to come in, have the girls talk to a female driver, sit in the truck. I mean, that's a great, not only is a community service, but it's also exposing young girls to those careers. We have an activity book called Scouting for Cookies, and it talks about how the grain goes from the field to the bakery in a truck, and then bakery to packaging in a truck. We want kids to look at our trucks and have a personal relationship with them and say, Mom, Dad, that could be my milk in that truck, or those could be my cookies in there. So it's creating awareness, because I'm sure you've heard this when people say, well, I see trucks on the road, but I don't think about them. We want them to think about it.
Yeah, it's mainly like you come into the COVID era. I don't think anybody really knows. You go by trucks all the time. I love looking at trucks because every time I try to figure out things, guess where it's going, what's on it, and then COVID hits and it changes because now you think about it. And it's that awareness. It's central to everything we do. I always laugh at my kids when they ask if I'm working. I always say back, are you eating? It's a broad awareness. What do you think the future holds for trucking?
Well, you're going to see a lot more autonomy in the truck. And I don't mean driverless trucks. I mean all the technology that the autonomous trucks are bringing into the industry makes it safer. Also, it makes the job of the driver different. So like I got to ride an autonomous vehicle and the driver basically sat there in his seat, no hands, no feet, ready in case something happens. But I think the more technology that goes on a truck, the less driver error there will be, again, which makes it a safer environment. But I don't think you're going to see driverless trucks running up and down the road as a common thing in my lifetime. I think that maybe specific situations, but I think the technology is really going to change the industry.
How was riding in an autonomous truck?
It was pretty cool. It was in San Francisco. It was horrible.
In the city or was it on the interstate?
I was in the city. It was the Uber, the auto truck, and the LiDAR and the radar. When a car would cut them off, then it would slow it back down. Of course, the detection. It had every piece of technology on there. I felt safe, but then again, there was someone sitting in the driver's seat ready to take over.
Have you taken the Waynos?
I have not, no.
In Arizona, in Scottsdale, you get in and it has your name on it. You sit in the back. There's no driver. It's crazy. I would be curious to see how an autonomous truck rides versus a traditional tractor.
I don't know, but I think the one that really makes me wonder is the drone-like situation where somebody's sitting in a terminal and all it is cameras all over the truck and they're actually driving it as if it's a drone. But to me, that, and I can't think of which company had that. It was one in Florida, but they would leave the terminal, they could back the truck in, and then somebody else could come, I'm done at 5, so you take over. I mean, there's nobody in the truck, they're in the terminal. So I think that make it almost a 9-to-5 job.
I mean, I also think too, a lot of the congestion at yards, drop yards, like big shippers coming in and out of a big yard, you could have 300, 500, 600 trailers. It's chaotic at best. Making sure it's safe and you know what the heck's going on is so different. So how did you get into radio? So you're on Active Radio too, right?
Yeah, it's funny because for many years I would be a guest on other people's radio shows. And they'd ask me to talk about women in trucking. They'd ask me to talk about women in non-traditional careers and things like that. And I even had like a weekly show. I think it was on one of the stations or one of the hosts. And finally they said, well, you should have your own show. And I'm like, yeah. So it's been 8 years now. And it's on Saturday mornings at 10 Central, 11 Eastern on Road Dog 146. And you never know what we're going to talk about. March is Women's History Month. So this week's show is about helping women become truck owners. And last week it was autonomous vehicles, ironically enough.
So you don't think in the near future autonomous vehicle trucks will be on the road, or what are your thoughts there?
I believe they'll be on the road. I don't think they're going to be common because none of them can drive in snow yet. Well, I'm in Wisconsin. So, I mean, we're not going to see them up here. We just had 7 inches of snow 2 days ago. So you wouldn't see an autonomous vehicle on our roads in the winter yet. Also, they still have to deal with a blown tire or a deer running out in the road. They still get some issues that they're going to have to deal with that would make it a little bit more reliable, let's put it that way. So they still have something to deal with. They're out there now, but in very limited capacity.
You think of getting more ownership for women to own trucking companies or being involved in logistics in any aspect. What do you think the key is there? I even noticed, like when I came to the industry in the early 2000s, it was mostly men, from the dispatchers to brokers to whatever it was. So how do you get more diversity? What do you think the key is? Is it at the college level? Is it at the high school level? Are there more programs, like you said, with the Girl Scouts? So really, how do we get more women into the industry?
So we need to understand who comes into the industry, and we need to understand what motivates them. So the average female that comes into the industry is about 50. Her kids are grown. 82% of them come into the industry because a family member or friend who talks them into it. So typically, most women come into the industry because of a husband or boyfriend who's already a driver, and they may start out as a team, maybe not, but that's the typical female right now. Her kids are already grown. These are not young women dealing with family issues. Now, we need to expand on that. We need to get more young women in, but that means we need to accommodate them having a family. So we need to understand who's coming in, why they're coming in. They're coming in because of the money. They know that the money's the same. We did the recruiting retention guide, and totally non-scientific, but there's 11,000 people on our Facebook page. So I went out and asked all the female CDL holders how many of them had a motorcycle license, and over 80% of them did. So that's the kind of woman we want. It feels comfortable in that kind of environment, not afraid of engines, not afraid of being in maybe a more typically male populated environment. And that's what we should be doing, is going after the guys in the industry who have moms, sisters, daughters, aunts, and say, let's bring them in. And then going to charity motorcycle events and saying, hey, have you ever thought about driving a truck?
So you said the average age is about 50?
Correct.
Interesting. Is the average male driver 21, 22?
No, the average age of all drivers in the industry now is over 40. These are not young drivers. These are older. It's not typically a first or second career. It could be a third career or whatever. But for women, I'm saying the average age of them coming in is 50. I don't know the average age of all the women in the industry because there are more younger. But I know for men, it's like late 40s.
It's interesting that the average being in the 50s, like you think about that much different worker pool than you traditionally look at. What's your thoughts on lowering the age to actually get your CDL?
Well, I have two thoughts on that. One is they're already driving. 49 states. You can be 18 years old. I live in Wisconsin. I have friends who have 18-year-old 19-year-old kids who are running pallets within the state. So they're already doing it. But I don't want them to lower the age because they think there's a driver shortage, because I think that we need to treat our drivers better and pay our drivers better. So if they want to lower the age to increase the number of drivers just to fill seats, I would say that's not the right reason. But again, in almost all the states in this country, in Wisconsin, you can drive. We're a pretty big state. I mean, look at Texas too. I mean, they're already out there, they're driving, and they're staying in the state or in-state freight.
I've just always wondered, when you leave high school and you want to pick a trade, if driving is not an option, do you get into a trade and not come back to it?
There are countries like, I've been in Australia and New Zealand, and I think Ukraine. I'm working with Ukraine now for them to get more women in the industry. They have a graduated CDL. So you start out with a lighter vehicle that's a straight truck. It doesn't bend. And then you can move into something that's bigger and heavier. And you have to work your way up before you get into a tractor trailer that's articulated. So I think we could do a better job getting people more acclimated to being a tractor trailer driver, because my training was 3 solid weeks. I mean, really, you put someone in a tractor trailer and put them out on the road. And in the aviation world, when you pass your FAA check ride, we say now you have the license to learn. And I think that's the same way for CDLs. When you pass your CDL, you need to keep learning.
There's so many too. Plus going over the road, driving in cities, just all the things you see from operating a tractor. There's so many different things. It's a very dynamic job in terms. You can see so many different situations day in and day out. And you're right.
Mountains or inclement weather like in Wisconsin, if you've been trained in the South and you come up to your first snowstorm of 7 inches like we had this week, if you don't know how to handle that, then it's not good.
I mean, even like backing a trailer in Pittsburgh or Chicago, the docks in the city, and you come down and your landing gear can hit. There's just so many different tricks to the trade. It's amazing talking to you. I've always enjoyed in the early days talking to drivers, because the drivers, there's so many different stories and learning the tricks of the trade. I love even produce drivers have endless stories of ways to deliver freight. It's fun to actually learn from them.
I remember walking through Washington, D.C. and walking down the street, and a truck had to back in. And I thought, that driver had like 2 inches on each side. And I actually commended him and I said, good job. I mean, he had to back in across the street. And you're right. It's not an easy job.
The shipper of choice thing, there's a lot to it. Like training drivers, you talk about retention and keeping people in the industry. I'm always amazed sometimes when you go to different shippers and you have the lack of proper restroom amenities, food, drink. Some of these people could be there, especially during COVID. Some places were even 11 to 12 hour averages. And you get to the driver's lounge with the single bathroom and they really can't leave.
I used to go to this warehouse conference and they would always have a session on the warehouse and the driver. And I'd go in and I'd be the only one there representing drivers and they're all warehouses. And they'd say, well, what is it that drivers want? And I'd say, oh, it's simple. A clean lounge area with a shower and Wi-Fi, fresh food. Oh, and how about a courtesy car? And they'd look at me, they're like, what? And I'm like, well, if you're going to keep them for 8 hours, give them a courtesy car. Let them run into town and do some shopping. And hey, what about a washer and dryer? And they just look at me like, no, we want to burn and churn. We want to get them in and out. And I'm like, but you're not getting them in and out. You're making them stay there.
You hear somebody's warehouse, like, oh my gosh, I mean, the way you're treating these people, they're never going to want to go back. And if they do, their mentality changes pretty quickly.
You mentioned restroom access. I mean, it's pretty sad that right now there's a restroom access bill that has been not passed to get, Nelson, Texas is one of the initiators of it, a bill to allow drivers to use a restroom if you have a public restroom available. And I think it's pretty sad that we have to ask the shippers and receivers to allow our drivers to use a restroom.
We once ran an analysis on overtime, and you can see the average that we paid on shippers that were in and out in less than 2 hours, even less than that. And in the same lane, same mileage band for places that were over 3-4 hours, the cost goes up, and it goes up over time. If it's a big lane, hundreds of thousands of dollars of freight expense, and ultimately ends up to the consumer. So just providing a more friendly environment to the drivers is important.
So do you also fly planes?
I do. I have a Cessna Skyhawk.
Oh, awesome.
It's a little 4-seater.
How was that in terms, compare that to driving a truck?
Well, it's 3-dimensional. So you're looking up, down, sideways. But the good thing is there's no cops up there. There's no speed bumps and no speed limits. So I can go as fast as I want.
Do you go very far?
My plane holds about 42 gallons. I burn about 7 an hour. So I can go a few hundred miles.
It's got to be a different feeling.
It is. And I actually passed my FAA check ride in October of 2007, got my CDL in December of 2007. And I thought I might as well get a motorcycle license. So I did that in March. And then some friends were going skydiving and invited me to go with. And I took our first jump on Mother's Day. And my daughter thought that I was like dying or something. She's like, "Are you okay, Mom? Are you okay? Are you trying to cross off your bucket list?" I'm like, "Well, no, I'm doing great."
Start an association, fly planes, drive trucks, motorcycles, be on a radio show.
Yep. Life is good.
Yeah, life is good. So retired now?
Partially. So retired as CEO, but when the board hired a new CEO, her expertise was in running a nonprofit association, and she didn't have a background in trucking. So I remained on to do speaking, podcasts, media interviews, things like that, which is the part I love. So I guess I'm still on a contract basis with Women in Trucking. And I have my radio show, which is the Women in Trucking show. And the next thing is to work on a book.
What's the book? Have you decided a direction?
Yeah, actually, I'm working with a publisher. And right now the working title is From Dispatcher to Disruptor.
Love it.
That process has to be daunting in a way, writing a book, but I really appreciate all that you've done for the industry and continue to do for the industry. It's good to highlight and show people where we can get better and where we can grow in our industry and make it more sustainable. So I appreciate and really appreciate you taking time to talk to us.
Well, thank you for inviting me and having me on. And I look forward to sharing this with our members and everyone else on social media.
And that's a wrap for More Than a Broker. You heard firsthand accounts from industry experts and Spot's hardworking individuals revealing a culture of collaboration and innovation. For more information about Spot, our service offerings, our people and culture, our job postings, and more, check us out online at spotinc.com. That is spotinc.com. Thank you for listening and for being part of this journey. Until next time, keep striving to be more than a broker.